Hello, today is September 18th, and you're listening to I Think, You Think. And I'm Justin, and on the other side of my computer screen is James.
Howdy, folks.
And Sequoia.
Hi.
James, you still don't have the blue thing. Is that still not working for you?
It's still not working for me.
Oh, man. That's not good.
No, it's upsetting to me.
We are your hosts. We carry no credentials worth noting. I Think You Think is a podcast that focuses on what we think, but also what you think. We believe that the forum of ideas should be open to everyone, and everyone should have the opportunity to challenge and be challenged by ideas. We're not here to pass judgment, though sometimes it may kind of sound like we are, but we are also here primarily to discuss ideas and topics. This podcast, first and foremost, is a conversation between us and hopefully you. So feel free to email us. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and at the Chicago Now blogs. All of these are linked in the underbar. You can also find all of the links on our Facebook page, facebook.com/ithink.youthink. I Think You Think is produced by StolenArts Productions and is recorded live at Fisher International Studios. So how is everybody doing this fine week of September 18th?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, me too. Starting a new job in a couple of weeks, so I'm riding out the end of the job I have now, and I've been playing Diablo 3 still, and I love it. It's fantastic.
I also picked it up, and I split the cost with my son, so I didn't have to pay for the whole thing. I actually have a really weird story about this. So I was looking for a copy of it because I didn't want to pay full price, so I was checking on Craigslist, where I go when I'm looking for cheap, inexpensive things. And I found one for $40 that was just the disc. It wasn't a case, but it was at a brick and mortar store. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well then it's got to be like sort of legit. I don't have to be too worried about it. And so I drive out there with, because I'm an excellent parent, my children to go to this store to buy this thing. And it is a store. Imagine what a pawn shop would look like if you took out all the tacky furniture that people had to pawn for their drugs, and I don't know if that was kind of judgmental, but and pawned video games and CDs and DVDs and all sorts of electronics, and that's basically what this place was. And so I buy it for $40, and I'm walking out with it, and I'm thinking to myself, because it's in great condition, I'm like, this thing is so stolen. Somebody stole this thing, sold it to this place, and I just bought it, and, but I got the game for $40, so I have no complaints.
First of all, I'm relatively certain that there's a place like that, right near where I live.
Well, you live, yes, it is. It is that place.
What are you about to say right now?
Well, you live at 1225. No, the area where you live, yes, it's out there.
It was probably the same one then, because I've been told
Yes.
never to go in there.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
I tried to carry really nice conversation with the lady that was behind the counter. I was like, "You guys buy gift cards?" Because they buy gift cards too, which also kind of screams to me
Shady.
stolen, shady, yeah. And they're like, "Yeah, you get 60% of the value. We verify the value. We give you a little bit more for gas cards." And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, because I work at a retail place that sometimes people buy gift cards and they think to them, and then they come back and they want to return them, and you can't do returns on gift cards, and I never know where to send them. And now I do, and she's like, okay. And I'm like, all right, we are done with this conversation. Thank you. Have a great day.
it's really awkward.
Doubly so for me because I had my children with me.
That is weird. Do they buy children, too?
Can I sell these?
That could be convenient.
So, Sequoia, what has been going on with you since our last podcast?
Well, I was told that I say this for the podcast, so I'm going to tell now. I actually had a really awful nightmare last night that woke me up in a panic at 7:30 this morning. I dreamt that I was at work and I took a huge drink order for a big group of people, a party of 25 or something, some major party that they were having. And I took the huge drink order, and then I put my order book down at work, took off my apron, and went home to go to sleep. And like I woke up this morning and I was like, oh my god, did I really do that? I did that. Oh my god, I don't have a job anymore. And I like freaked out, and then I was like, that was a dream, because it ended with me eating cake. And there's no cake in my apartment. Like, that was how I knew that it was a dream.
Sounds like you need a couple days off of work.
Yeah, I was thinking. I wonder what Freud would have to say about this.
God, I would woke up really afraid. But other than, weird work nightmares, mostly just schoolwork, move stuff, Just, I'm rarely at rest anymore, so, yeah.
It sounds like you're an adult.
Yeah, basically.
It's a really sad story.
Being an adult?
Kind of, yeah.
Some years.
Well, that's a perfect transition into our rather upbeat topic this week. We are talking about everything. It's our political social week, so we are talking about what's going on in Syria to kind of jump off this where we're going. And then we'll move on to our articles. I say we will, like I have an article this week, or anything. Anyway, so we're going to start with Syria, and basically, from what I understand, what's going on is there was chemical weapons that was used allegedly by Assad, the president of Syria, or ruler, dictator, whatever, or person who was voted into office but never left. I'm not sure how
he's the son of the ruler who first came into power in like 1970 or 71.
Okay, but some sort of leadership head of Syria. And if, for those who, suddenly just crawled out from under a rock, didn't know, Syria is in the throes of a civil war. And so the Assad and the pro-Assad group is fighting against the rebels, sorry, I think I was going on a Star Wars thing there for a second, and then it just kind of fell flat, and I was like, okay, what's going on in my brain? I'm working on about 4 hours of sleep right now for the last 2 days, so bear with me. Anyway, Assad has killed lots of people. However, recently, in the last couple of weeks, it's alleged that he had used chemical weapons, which our president, Barack Obama, had said that chemical weapons is the red line. He's not the only one. I mean, the UN has basically said chemical weapons is the red line in how we play war. We are not allowed to use chemical weapons. And so that started this big whole thing, and now we're in a position where the president was looking for support to go and bomb some targets in Syria that would kind of help shut down some of Assad's chemical weapons stuff, and that didn't happen. What they ended up doing at this point, where it is Russia is trying to work out a deal, and where Syria hands over their chemical weapons to Russia, basically, and gets them out of that country. But now, just recently, I had seen that Russia has been claiming that the UN inspectors who went in, who say that they found evidence that it was Assad who did the chemical weapons attacks, Russia is claiming that the UN inspectors are biased, and that they actually have evidence that it was the
rebels.
Rebels, thank you. Thanks for helping me along here. The rebels that used the chemical weapons, and so that's where we're at now. Thoughts, guys, lady and gentlemen.
Well, I will say that most of my knowledge about Syria at this current moment comes from the Hank Green video, Syria in 5 minutes, so I'm not going to be terribly well versed in what's going on in Syria, I regret to say. I do know that like part of the thing that he talked about in the video that you brought up was the whole thing with you know, them handing over all their weapons to Russia because them and Russia are sort of allies. And it all started, that whole train of thought started because John Kerry was sort of like, you know, the only way that Assad, you know, or, you know, Assad could keep us from bombing him if he were to hand over his weapons, thinking that that was not something that would happen. And then, you know, everybody was kind of like, no, 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 we can totally do that. So, and I'm basically quoting the Hank Green video, so if you guys want to see it, I highly suggest it. But anyway, so, I mean, I guess one of the things about what's going on with Syria and our decision to attack, I think, and it's what I thought of when it first started happening, was that it all seemed to boil down to what Obama thought. But the truth is that the only way we can wage war is through Congress. The president can give a recommendation, but it has to go through Congress. So, and it seems like, you know, sort of starting back with the Iraq War, that hasn't really been as much of a thing. I mean, it seems to be more rest on the president now as opposed to Congress, which I think is an unusual phenomenon, and I'm not really sure if that's a good thing or not. It seems to go more down to the president than it used to.
There is, there are ways that the president can move military around and make attacks and things like that that doesn't require Congress. And that was the big thing about what was going on with what Obama was saying, is he basically said, listen, I have the authority to do this. My people are telling me I have the authority to do this, but I want to do it, you know, I want to do it this way. I want to have, you know, Congress be behind it. But you're right, like a declaration of war has to be signed, like Congress has to. But I don't think we've actually made a declaration of war since World War II. I don't think Vietnam, Korea, either one of, you know, Iraq, any of those had any declarations of wars.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very odd, you know, like just skirting the rules.
Yeah.
Well, I think the idea originally, the way that they've got it now is it was to prevent what happened in Vietnam, in which the president sent people in, but Congress never actually officially went to war, and so there wasn't any funding that was ever allocated for this military venture, and so that's one of the things, not that it could all be distilled down into this one action, but that was one of the things that led to an incredibly awful situation in Vietnam. And so they made this, I think it's like a 90-day whatever that the president can do to, it allows them to make quick reactions that normally, you know, Congress, evidently it's difficult, especially in this day and age, to get members of Congress suddenly all together to, you know, take a vote on whether or not we should go to war. Like that's a difficult thing to do, evidently.
It's difficult to get Congress to do anything.
Well, right, but I mean, to actually get them together doesn't seem like that's difficult to do. That should be easy. I mean, in this
should
day
be
and age,
being the operative phrase.
Whether or not they actually do anything at that point, then yeah.
Whether or not they do anything at all is debatable, but that's beside the point. Not that I have thoughts on that at all.
Well, let's come back to the Syria thing. Like, what are your guys' thoughts on, like, what do you think we should do? Do you think that we should just, you know, bomb the hell out of them, or, you know?
Well, I think the biggest problem that I've seen in the way that governments have reacted to it is the fact that Russia and China have just been like, no, we're not going to let the UN do anything. Nope, that's our friend. We don't care if he did it or not. And they just stopped the UN from being able to do something unified, which has put America in the position where, you know, because if this is what happened, if he actually used sarin gas on his own people, whether it was him or, I mean, the rebels don't just have sarin gas. So if there's sarin gas, that's a government thing, you know? You're not just going to be like, hey, we're rebels and we're going to get sarin gas. Well, I mean, maybe that's possible, because they have, there's members of I think it's called the FSA. I don't remember exactly, but whatever the rebel group is, there's members of that rebel group that are actually members of extremist groups. Because I mean, if you look where Syria is on the map,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's Jordan, there's Iraq, there's Israel and Palestine. There's a lot of conflict that has and does go on in that area of the world. So, some of the people from those other areas of conflict have joined this rebellion, which started in like 2011. I kind of really went full force because some kids were teenagers and kids were doing anti-government graffiti, and they got arrested, and some of them died while they were in custody. And that's what just, the powder keg blew at that point, I guess. But it seems, if Russia and China wouldn't have done what they did, then we as America wouldn't be in a situation of kind of looking at it on our own. And the UK got voted down too. The parliament was like 280-something to 270-something to not get involved.
Right.
But if there are people using chemical weapons against one another, whether it's the government that did it or the rebels, the rest of the world, I feel, does need to get involved. Because, not like, getting shot is a pretty way to die, but, the effects of these chemical weapons are so horrific. And Doctors Without Borders reported treating like 3,600 people with neurotoxin issues.
Yeah, and what's worse is, first of all, chemical weapons, I agree, is an awful way to wage war. I'm not for war, probably pretty much in any regard, but that's an awful way to do it. But what makes it even worse is that the chemical weapons aren't even being used on like military targets. They're being used on the population at whole. I mean, and that's one of the biggest problems, that not to mention the ramifications of these chemicals being in the atmosphere and things like that, and what kinds of problems might it potentially make down the line. I don't know how. From what I remember, I don't think that the sarin gas is not as detrimental to like the environment as something like mustard gas or something like that, which is like will not only fuck you up, but it will fuck up everything around you.
Yeah.
You were talking about Russia and China kind of putting a damper on what was going on in the UN. Right. If we did find out, let's say Russia's right, let's say that there is actually evidence that it is the rebels that had done this with the sarin gas, and they're actually gassing their own people to try to blame Assad and try to get America involved, then while you're right that either one of the sides doing chemical weapons, the rest of the world should probably be involved. But because Russia and I don't know, was it China or was it Russia and Iraq?
Russia and China. I don't think Iraq. Well, maybe they are part of the UN, but if they are, I don't know. Who knows? But Russia and China are the two.
So if they were like stopping the UN from reacting and bombing some targets of Assad's, then I would think that they would actually be in the moral high ground if we come to find out that it was the rebels.
The rebels. Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't sound like that's. I don't know. That just doesn't feel like that's the course of how things would go. Again, not to say that the rebels couldn't have sarin gas, but statistically, it is way more likely that a long-term government in that area of the world has it long before rebels were able to get a hold of it. You know what I mean?
Right. I find it more likely that it was Assad rather than the rebels, and Russia's claims that it wasn't, and their claims that the UN inspectors are biased, seems silly. It's almost like saying, this or that scientist is biased. I mean, when it comes down to the science, it's not. It's just, this is what it is. These are the facts.
Right.
And then how those facts are interpreted is up to how it I don't know. I don't know how to.
Yeah, I mean, one way or the other, though, like hundreds of kids died of this sarin gas. Somebody bigger and badder than either of these groups, the rebels or Syria, needs to step in and be like, fucking no, okay? Like and the UN should be doing that. Like, as a unified group of countries, we should be going in there and being like, that should have never happened. We're gonna bad things are gonna happen because you did, and it is never gonna happen again, or we will make Syria not exist. I don't care. You're fighting over this land. There will be no land if you're gonna do that. You know what I mean? I mean, not like that's what you really want to do. I mean, that's not the point that you bring it to. But someone needs to get in there, put their foot down, stop what's going on. I mean, there's wars all over the world all the time, but like 100,000 people have died. And now there's like whatever it was, like 1,500, I think.
It was something like that. It was in right around that 1,000 ish, because they were drawing comparisons between the fact that this civil war has killed something like 100,000 people already, and yet this one chemical weapon attack was like less than 10% or somewhere around 10% of the same amount, or 1% or something. I don't remember what it was, but it was really small, and they're like, and now everybody wants to get involved.
But it's the manner in which it happens.
Correct.
It's the difference between, like I said, gunfire or explosions aren't glorious. There's nothing awesome about going that way. But, chemical warfare is horrific. There's no other word for it.
It's something that the UN has said, no. I mean, like, these are the rules of war. I mean, we've reached... I guess it's kind of nice to exist in a society that's reached the point where we're actually going to have certain rules as it pertains to war, but it is sort of kind of dependent upon everybody being willing to play by the same rules.
Right, and Russia and China decided they weren't, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Because they're allies with Syria.
Well, and I think the reason that it's sort of, like, contentious here in America, because a lot of people here in America are like, oh God, no, don't go, is I think that you're also looking at a world that is war weary. Mm-hmm. Not saying that I don't think it's a matter of people not caring about Syria or not caring that these children died, that this event happened. I think it's being afraid to undertake that again, because we're still in the middle of Afghanistan and Iraq. We're looking at, a decade of war. And I think a lot of people are really, war weary. I think a lot of countries are not saying that that's why Russia and China are saying no. That's obviously not the same intention. But I think that's why it's such a hot button issue for a lot of people, is I think people are really afraid.
Yeah, I think a lot of people liken the evidence of the sarin gas and the chemical weapons similar to the evidence that, yes, Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. One thing, and this is completely not based on anything, it was just my brother and I were having a conversation about Syria back when I was in Ohio, and we were talking about it, and he had brought up something, and it just as like isn't it interesting, food for thought type of thing, and he said, we were sure there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We went in there, but we talked about it for a long time, and by the time we got there, suddenly they were all gone. Maybe they got moved. Iraq is awfully close to Syria. Syria is now in the middle of a war and they're using weapons of mass destruction. And it was just I'm not saying that that's what happened, but it's interesting to think about. Maybe there were weapons of mass destruction, but maybe this sarin gas that was just used in Syria had been sarin gas that had been sitting in stockpiles in Iraq that had gotten moved out prior to our invasion.
And you saying that reminds me that I believe that speculation was even up when they were searching for weapons of mass destruction, that it was thought that they got moved to Syria to be stored.
Again, none of us have any credentials in regards to this being the case, but it is something.
It's speculation. Consider. It's a possibility. It had to come from somewhere,
Right. And I think a lot of people look at what happened in Iraq, the fact that there was there was claimed to be evidence. We got there was nothing, and we're in the same sort of. We have evidence that this is taking place. We need to do something about it, and so Americans and many of the rest of the Western world is like, Iraq. We're still stuck in Afghanistan. I mean, like, what's our plan here? I mean, yeah. So.
Yeah, I think another reason that people are up in arms about it is because it's Obama talking about it. There's a lot of people in this country that he just can't do anything right. There's nothing he can ever do that will ever be right. Like for whatever reason, like, I mean, it's not been a perfect presidency, but let's look at what, the president before that did. I mean, let's look through the history of presidents. There are only a handful in there that really, at least in the modern era, if you will, that really left it better than they got it. But there's a lot of people just because it's him that are always going to yell out against it. No matter what it is. He could be like, I found someone who's got the cure for cancer and I'm going to give it away for free. Well, where's my tax dollars from the cure for cancer? Somebody will have some thing to get up and yell about because he's the one who said it. So
Obama could come out and say my favorite color is blue and somebody say you're a liar, it's green.
Yeah.
Like,
pretty much.
I think we see
the sky was blue, they'd go out and check.
I think we see that a lot more, and I don't. Maybe it's because the three of us are much more left-leaning, but I feel like I see a lot more of that with Obama. But I also think that any presidency, to a certain extent, has that from the extremes on the opposite side. I'm kind of in a unique scenario in which I was raised pretty much hardcore Republican. My brother is Republican. I mean, him and I don't see eye to eye on a lot of political things. But I remember like growing up and being told how everything Clinton was doing was wrong, and bad. And then Bush got into office, and I was at the beginning of the Bush years. I was, oh yeah, Bush, and afterwards, near the end, that was during the time that Bush was in office. I don't think it was because of Bush, but during that time was really where I transitioned from much more right to more to the middle, and then now significantly more to the left. So I like to believe I'm still in the middle, but I'm a socialist. So, I guess I'm more to the left now.
Yeah, I mean, not to get off too far on a tangent, but I don't like to really think of myself as any of those things. I feel like it puts it in a box. I'm on the right. I'm on the left. We can talk about different issues, and I'll talk about them. And if at the end we talk about 12 issues and I'm on the left on all of them, I would consider that coincidence. You know what I mean? Because I will look at every issue separately, and I don't want to be this or that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's just a tangent. I don't know. I mean, getting back on Syria, I mean, this thing has been going on for a long time, since like 2011. So, I mean, it's been going on for, 100,000 people have died. And it is a small percentage that died from this incident, but it just, I don't know. It angers me a little bit that, getting back on the China and Russia thing, that they just said, no, we're not going to, we're going to say no. We're not going to react to this at all. We're not going to allow the UN to get involved, which intentionally, I think, puts us out there to have to, because it's in our nature as a country. Something like that happens to react. You know what I mean? Like, how many times have we done it, one way or the other? When a country really starts treating its people so badly that you can't not react, we're the country that shows up. We don't always show up alone. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of other countries that do it as well, but we are the main country that reacts in those kind of scenarios. So, they, and this is just complete speculation, but I think they intentionally said no to that to put us in this position so maybe we can react and get embroiled in one more war, you know, because Russia doesn't seem to like us, China doesn't seem to like us, you know, and they're realistically, they're still the two big boys in the block, you know.
And what's really kind of I don't know, scary or worrisome, but I mean the next Olympics are right around the corner in 2014 in Russia, and there's already all sorts of like things that people are throwing, you know, they're getting upset about in regards to the Olympics in Russia, not because they're in Russia, but because of some of the policies that Russia has in place.
Which is a whole other podcast.
Indeed. I don't know what time we actually got started because we were
about quarter after. I think we're about halfway
okay,
through.
so we're about halfway through. So I think you think.
Hey, you know, my birthday's coming up. Have you guys given any thought to what you want to buy me?
I have given it lots of thought. Actually, I haven't. Your birthday's coming up?
Yeah, October.
Yeah, okay.
Early October.
I know Sequoia's is coming up.
It is coming up in a couple of days.
So maybe Sequoia would want to buy, or we should buy for Sequoia something from StravaMax.com.
What's that?
StravaMax.com is a online jewelry retailer that the young lady who made all of our graphics for our show and our podcast also makes the jewelry for StravaMax. Very nice stuff. Please take the time to check it out. You know, if you like something, if you're interested in it, then go ahead and get it. You know, treat yourself. But they also have a Facebook. You can also follow them on Twitter now, evidently. I'd click on it, but then, you know, bad things tend to happen when I click on stuff. So
we'll just lose you from the podcast for like 20 minutes.
Yeah. Where did Justin go? So there you go. StravaMax.com. Check it out. Support the people who support us, and in turn support them. So thanks.
So rumor on the street is that we came really close to having no articles today, because I'm notorious for having no articles.
Yep.
And then you are on like your 4 hours of sleep, and Sequoia was just like, forget it. If James is going to do articles, I'm not going to do articles. Or she was busy. It was one or the other.
No, I was seriously sitting there like, you know what? James can have the articles this week. I'm taking a James week. And then I was like, no, I can't do that.
Well, I have articles this week. So I don't want to air it.
Justin gets to be James this week.
Well, no, Justin. Don't you don't have an article, Justin?
I did grab one article.
Okay.
I have one that I did want to think about and bring up. However, I was listening to NPR where they were talking about Charles Manson and this guy who just recently, wrote a book about Charles Manson, and it was pretty interesting. I didn't know that he was friends with the drummer from the Beach Boys.
You didn't know that?
Huh?
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that. I don't know a lot about Charles Manson other than the fact that he was, you know, his family, drugs, and killed people.
If I remember correctly, his friendship with the Beach Boys guy may have actually precipitated his mental crumble. Yeah,
there was a lot of things that kind of. I mean, it was a good article on NPR that I was listening to. If I was a big reader, like I would be like, oh man, I would really like to get that book from the library and at least read it. But you know, I'm not a big reader.
Too American to read. That's what I like about you, Justin.
So many better things to do, like buy hamburgers and eat them.
Reality television. You can watch some Honey Boo Boo.
Jersey Shore.
Nothing more American than some Honey Boo Boo and a burger.
That seems disgusting.
Pretty much, both of them actually.
So let's start with James.
Let me show off because I got my
articles.
Okay, I got 2, and it's going to be a relatively light break between our main break and the articles that I am understanding that both. Okay, so article from The Atlantic. MIT, the title is The Next Step on the Path to an Online-Only Education. MIT is now launching these courses. You take 2 years of courses that are free, all online, and then at the end of them, you pay to take a test, and then you get a verified certificate of, you know, your completion of it. So it's kind of like trade schoolish in that way. But they're basically talking in the article about how this could be the future of education. Is basically, you know, the information will be out there, which rolls right into some of the other stuff I read, articles I didn't take. People talking about the future of education really being in cloud saving stuff. Because that way, like a school, the curriculum will all be in the same place, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, the thing is that eventually it could be where you want to learn Spanish and all the courses are basically free, but if you ever want to take the test to actually get certified in that, it would cost X amount of dollars to take the test. Right now it's $700 for the courses MIT is just launching. But I think it's really interesting that it could eventually get to that point where, you know, really, I mean, there's no way that everything could ever be online because there's a lot of stuff, you know, you're not going to get Amazon to drop off a cadaver at your house when you got to do some, you know, internal medicine stuff.
That's what you think.
You know, you never know. I
It
mean,
all depends on who you know.
Craigslist, yeah, but Amazon. So I think it's just interesting that we've actually already gotten there to a point, and this is just like another step in that direction of, you know, schooling really being kind of an online, do it from home, you know, something like that you could do from anywhere in the world. You could, you know, be, you know, have a job down in Antarctica, and as long as they have internet, you could continue your education, you know what I mean, in the wilderness up in, you know, Alaska, and still be able to educate. So I thought that was very interesting. The other one on the same,
I'm going to cut you
Yeah.
off because I wanted to ask a question about your article.
Okay.
I wonder, or more statement of query, or whatever. I wonder if you're taking the class, like, do you have to get a book, and do you have to drop like $150 on a book? Because I know books are really expensive when you go to school. So.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about the books. It's basically saying that everything is online. It's like 2 years worth of courses. Because it's an education with massive open online courses.
What is it for a bachelor's degree?
No, like at this stage, it is not an official education.
Oh, okay.
Sort of like beta education.
They don't. The edX course is what they're calling them. edX, ED, course sequences don't offer academic credit, but they do offer professional education credentials.
Okay.
Which for
like
employers may be just the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's it's not your normal, but I mean, like a lot of community colleges offer stuff like that, where you'll take the courses in Word or Excel or some of the basic kind of document processing stuff we have, and you know how to use it. You know what I mean? So I mean, a 2-year course is obviously going to be a lot more than that, but if something tech related, I mean, that's going to be fine. People are going to be okay with that. I mean, if you know your stuff, you know your stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to take a class like that on like computer programming or something.
Yeah, I mean, it could be very interesting, and they don't really get into the details of what courses are offered there. There are some links to click through, but
we'll post it. We'll post it on our Facebook page.
Okay, I can.
You don't have to do it right now, James.
I'll do it when the next one. Well, I have it up. I don't want to close it and forget. So when you guys are talking about your articles, I will post that.
Okay.
So the other one is about something called adaptive learning. We've talked kind of about the progress of textbooks in a previous podcast and how they can be interactive if they're online or digital. You know, it can be videos and things like that, interactive quizzes where they give you the answers right away and grade you out right away. Well, they've been doing this thing called adapt courseware, and they find and people were really questioning it But they did a study, and people are getting like much higher grades. You know, like 15% higher. You know, what was it? 74%, a 15% improvement over the comparison group. Or 10% is 64%, as far as like the average grades of the people doing the normal learning versus the adaptive learning. Which 15% is a big jump when you're talking about education and retention and everything like that. They use multimedia, and the adaptive part of it is students get kind of to choose how they want to learn. Watching something happen, just reading about it, or practice. And they can, you know, sort of choose their path, choose their own adventure to learning math, whatever it is. So, and that one is from, where was this one? emergingedtech.com is where this one was. It's really interesting, though, and I feel like these two things are kind of combined as you see the technology or the progress coming from two very different directions. You know, you have the school that's offering these online courses, while this other group or groups are developing even more effective, like multimedia, computer-based education that's even more effective than what we're used to having. And I think it's exciting because, you know, we use our technology for so many things. I mean, even this. It's kind of silly. We love it. We have fun. You know, our two viewers are avid. They love us. You know, and I mean, all the different things are Netflix and Facebook and, you know, texting and YouTube, and there's so much that technology offers that's basically like entertainment, you know, time sinks on one level or another. And just to see like the massive amounts of technological jumps we've had coming to this point in education, I think is great. I mean, it's great for basically the whole world, because once you start making those leaps and bounds and you start really hitting those areas of plateau where it's working and, you know, things are solid, that offers comprehensive education to people in every corner of the world, and a possibly more effective educational tool than we may have ever had before.
It's definitely a better bang for your buck. I mean, it's significantly less expensive to get electricity and like a laptop to a small community in the middle of Syria than it is to try to get a group of 25 children together where you have one teacher who's willing to teach them.
And only has a certain area of expertise, too.
Right. And here, with something like that, you have basically a great opportunity to get more of that information out to people. And I'm one of those people who believe the more educated the populace, the better decisions our society as a whole will make.
I want to say, like, I am currently experiencing like education being integrated with technology right now, because like I've taken online courses before, but I'm taking an in-seat class, but all of our homework for this one in-seat class is done completely online. So what I do is I go in and I open my homework assignment, and it comes up in a separate screen, and I have all these problems that I have to work through, and it's, you know, word problems, stuff like that. But there's a little button on the side at all times that says, help me solve this equation. So if I'm not getting it, I click on that button, and it brings up a screen that walks me step by step, basically drags me by the nose to the correct answers and shows me step by step how to do it, tells me what pages in the textbook it's in, and then once I say, okay, I've got it now, it generates a new problem for me to practice on. And I can keep trying the same thing over and over and over again until I get it right.
Is that a math class you're taking that on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You had mentioned that you were in a math class.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was taking a college algebra class a few years ago, and I did it all online, and I loved it. It's a great program. It's probably very, very similar. And I mean, I taught myself algebra stuff that I hadn't looked at in almost 10 years since when I was in high school.
I'm not necessarily mathematically inclined. And after I've been trying to do, you know, the homework before class, so I'm sort of prepared for what we're going to be doing in class a little bit ahead of the curve. because I'm an overachiever. And like we were doing stuff I'd work through on the homework, and generally it takes me a little bit longer to get things just because my brain doesn't work in a mathematical way. And like the first problem I'm like going through it, I'm like, this can't be right. These numbers, I'm so off. This can't be right. He said the answer, and I was like, who's a baller? Who right here? This girl got it all right because I did the homework. Like the program is great. Like I feel like where I should be in my math class, and that's a great feeling, you know, because and it's a lot to do with the technology. It's awesome.
So let's Sequoia, let's go ahead and move on to one of your articles, because I know that mine kind of piggybacks off of one of yours, I think, a little bit.
Yeah. Well, then in that case, I'll go with a different one first, and I'll do that one second. The first one that I had was about, I don't know if you guys heard about Starbucks. The big controversy surrounding Starbucks right now is that they have said that they don't want weapons in their stores. They don't want patrons to bring guns into their stores. And the CEO was recently like sort of questioned about it, and he was like, yeah, no, sticking to my guns. I don't want guns in my stores. And it's sort of creating this big controversy, especially because, like, you know, of like different concealed carries being passed and stuff like that, and they're just like, no guns in Starbucks stores.
See, I don't understand why that's such a big deal. Like, my family lives in Ohio, and I remember several years ago going back to Ohio, and we were stopping at a Papa John's to get some pizza. And as we were walking in, I saw a little picture on the window that said, "No weapons allowed on the premises." No, and it had a gun, and in the little circle with the line through it. And I laughed, and I said, that's kind of funny. I mean, no weapons on the premises. I mean, nobody's allowed to carry weapons, so ha ha ha. And my brother's like, no, we have concealed carry here. I'm like, and it's like serious. And that's a very normal thing in most areas that have concealed carry, that most private companies say, no, you're not allowed to have weapons on our property. It might not be necessarily the case further south, but certainly up here, that's very common, and so that's why I don't understand why people are up in arms about Starbucks like throwing a fit about it. Not even throwing a fit, just saying, hey, listen, it's private property. We're saying no. We care about our employees, and there you go.
I feel like it's a double-edged sword, though. Like, I think it's fine if you own the company, if you want to make that decision, but one of the things that concealed carry offers is normally lower crime rates. If I'm a criminal and I know I can walk into a Starbucks and be the only one who has a gun, but normally that's not the case, you don't know that everywhere you go, it makes them a target for crime, I would think. Because in areas where there's concealed carry, you never know who has a gun. You never know. So being a criminal, there's a big risk. You could be trying to hold up the teller and turn around to 4 patrons being like, yeah, no, I don't think so.
Well, I don't know if it was you and I that ever had this conversation, or if this was with my brother, but as a manager, that scares the crap out of me to know if there was concealed carry, to know that any one of my customers, if somebody comes in and pulls a gun on my cashier, that any one of my customers might whip out a gun and start firing. And that worries me. Like, I would rather people who have been trained, like my cashier, to how to respond to that kind of a situation, just let it happen. Okay, here's the money. Please leave the store as quickly as possible. The person with the gun leaves, and people are safe, instead of Rambo pulls out his gun and says, "Not in my fucking house," and starts popping caps all up in my store.
But the thing is, it's like that deterrence of, you don't know if the old lady behind you in line has got a .38 snub nose in her purse, or the guy 2 people back has got an automatic pistol under that jacket. You don't know. So as a criminal, it's not the same. You know what I mean? Because you don't know.
I suppose so, but people can own guns in their home.
Yeah.
And people with guns still break into people's homes and don't know whether or not there are guns in that home. And it doesn't deter them. They don't go, oh, that person might have a gun in their house, I better not break into their house.
Yeah, but I bet the statistics on like armed robbery of like a retail location compared to, breaking and entering, like when people are home, I would say that, the armed robbery is probably higher. I'm just saying, I think it takes away a little bit of that deterrent that concealed carry offers an area by not allowing people to bring guns in there. I don't know. That's just my take on
I
it.
suppose I'm sort of anti-gun, so.
Yeah, but
I think realistically for a place like Starbucks, if you are living in a state that has concealed carry, I think that if someone's walking up to the door and sees a sign that says no weapons in here, they're not going to go, oh crap, and turn around and put their gun back in their car. Like, realistically, that's not going to happen. I mean, like, if concealed carry is already legal in that state, people are going to have their guns on them, and I don't think that they're going to, like, turn around and put them back in their car, because it's legal for them to have them on their person.
I would really love to be the manager who has to walk up to the guy and say, excuse me, sir, you need to put your gun back in your car. You're not allowed to bring it into this store.
Like, and I mean, the whole idea of concealed carry is that you're not, I mean, it's obviously, like, it's concealed, like, nobody knows if you have it. So, I mean, I'm really sort of ambivalent about gun laws as far as, like, whether or not guns should be completely outlawed. I mean, I'm not comfortable with the average citizen having automatic guns. Like, that's not something I'm really, like, I don't think anybody needs to have an AK-47. But that being said, handguns for personal protection, I'm sort of ambivalent about it. I don't really care one way or the other. I mean, and I've had a gun pulled on me when I got mugged, so I mean, it's not like, I'm completely, just like, oh, gun violence isn't a thing. Like, I know it's a thing, but I'm just sort of ambivalent about it. But I think realistically that, I think if that's something that Starbucks wants to say, is that we don't want guns in our place, they are totally allowed to do that. And if that's something that they really believe in, then that's something that they really believe in. But I think realistically, in a state that allows concealed carry, it's probably not going to have that big of an effect on whether or not people bring guns into the store.
Especially a lady that, like, just has it in her purse.
Yeah.
No one would know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how would you even enforce it?
And for some people, I think it's probably, like, especially in states that have had long-standing concealed carry laws, there are probably people, like a lady who carries it in her purse along with her keys and her lipstick. She probably just doesn't even think about it. It's just in there. Yeah.
And all you're really doing, if you actually expect everyone to obey that, is at best putting them all through your drive-through, and they're not coming in anymore, and at worst losing customers. Because if you're going to carry a gun, because you have concealed carry, you're going to be responsible. You're not just going to leave it in your car. You can't do that. Someone can smash the glass and get away with your gun. And that's one more dangerous weapon out in the hands of someone who shouldn't have one because they couldn't get one on their own. So, I mean, it's about kind of social responsibility. If you are going up and you're going to get Starbucks and you have it in your purse or you have it, you're just going to go in and you're going to get it if you're a responsible gun owner. It's ridiculous, but it's actually more responsible to do that, I think, than to, like, turn around and, like, put it in your glove box. Or it's more likely to, get stolen by a criminal and then be used for future crimes, which is awesome.
And I just want to state that my, saying that I don't think people would follow the rule of Starbucks is not me saying that there's no need for gun laws, because I know a lot of people use that argument that, you can't, that, less gun laws is better because that means that there's more guns in the hands of people who should have them and all that. I think gun laws are important. I think that they're good. The limit of restriction is not something I'm terribly versed in or something that I'm terribly passionate about, but I mean, I think gun laws are important, but I think that, if you're saying that, you can't have your weapons in some place like Starbucks or McDonald's or something like that, like, realistically, it's not really going to affect their day-to-day business, like, because someone's going to have a concealed carry all the time and nobody's going to know that they have it on them. Like in what I don't I guess I'm just confused as to why this is sort of like become like are there a lot of people who've been waving their guns around Starbucks? Like I don't know.
I think there was a photo of some. I mean, I don't know if this was the catalyst or if this was because of the statement of someone with like an M16 standing there in a Starbucks. You know, I mean, like not in an aggressive way. You know, as non-aggressive as you can be while holding an M16. But I don't know if one has to do with the other or if there's some incident. I don't know. I don't know what came first, the statement or the picture.
Okay.
Either way, we only got about 4 minutes left. So.
All right. Well, moving on. I did, want to bring this up. The Aaron Alexis shooting, the Navy Yard shooting. I think it's important that we do talk about when these things happen. I think it's terribly sad, and I think all of our hearts go out to the people, who were involved in the shooting. Unfortunately, I think it's probably just more dispersion of media, but it seems more and more like these things happen more and more, and it's always very sad when they do. It's always very shocking. So I'll let you guys say your.
Well, I do remember when the shooting in Connecticut happened. We were doing research on this stuff, and those kind of violent outbursts kind of happen at semi-regular intervals, and it has not really increased or decreased, over the decades. It just kind of, it happens. It just happens, and it's a tragedy every time, and it's horrible. But it's not that they are actually increasing. News coverage is definitely way more than it ever was, even a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The way stuff comes out on the internet, because a lot of, and the smartphones that everybody carries, like news gets from where it happened to your hand, like so fast now. And everybody's got it. So even if you didn't read it, maybe someone else you're working with that day or you're hanging out with that day, it popped up on their phone, or it pops up on Facebook or, wherever it is. So news travels very fast. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I just remember reading that, like, there was a study about it, and the frequency hasn't increased. These violent outbursts aren't happening more often than they were in the 70s.
Yeah.
According to the article I read.
See, my little tirade about it is probably be a very long conversation, but I'm tempted to just spit it out of my face because it's just been anybody who has. This is like my Westboro Baptist Church moment. Okay, anybody who tries to tie this shooter's race into what happened is an awful person and a racist, because most mass shootings are done by white people, and I just want to point that out. And I think it's bullcrap that his race is being brought into it. I think it is just a perfect example of how racist this country is.
That's really interesting because, one, I've only heard the articles regarding this on the radio, and so I had no idea that. I had just assumed he was white. When I was listening to them recounting it on NPR, I just assumed, I was just thinking, oh, it's just it's another one of those, very similar like in Newtown and type thing. Mm-hmm. And so I haven't seen any pictures or anything about what has happened, and that's interesting because I had no idea. This is the first time I've heard that. So what ethnicity is he?
He's African American.
Oh, is he? Okay. Mm-hmm. I'd heard that there was they have been like doing some sort of a profiling on him, trying to figure out like what had happened to him over the last few months. That's kind of led him to where he is at this point. So to kind of piggyback off of what both of you guys just said, the one article that I got, it's something that I'd heard that I hadn't had a chance to look up, but it's this nice little infographic. I'm going to show you on here. And this is all of the mass shootings that have taken place since Newtown. And the size of the circle has to do with how many fatalities that don't include the shooter, Most of them are 5s, except for the one in Washington that had just happened, and that was the 10. And so these are all the ones since Newtown, not even any other ones. Now, it does have a note on here that said that the data collected is from various databases and news reports and may be incomplete, like the numbers might not be entirely specifically accurate, but I don't think it's off by, like, huge factors or anything. But that was just more of a, James and I, when one of our first shows in the first month or two that we started this podcast, we talked about Newtown, we talked about gun laws, hoping that things were going to change, and I guess I feel like things really haven't. I feel you're right in the sense that every day people are getting shot. There's gun violence that's taking place. In Chicago, right near us, I'm pretty sure that at least one person a day dies from gun violence, on average. I think last year there was a huge article about the fact that there was 24 hours or 48 hours or something in New York or Chicago where there was no gun violence, and there were no deaths from gun violence or something like that, and that was like a huge thing. So I mean, people are dying every day from getting shot. The mass shootings are the ones that get the media attention, and so people think that any given day no one's getting shot by a gun until something like in Washington happens, or something in Newtown, or something in like Columbine, going back even further, takes place, and it's just not the case. Like, people are getting killed by guns every day. We just are sensationalizing or drawing a microscope on these instances, and they're the ones that people are kind of fixating on. So I don't know. I mean, like, I'd hope that this would be another situation, because the guy who did this in Washington obtained his guns legally. I mean, he bought them legally. It's just another. It supports my argument that I think that we should have stricter gun laws. Not necessarily in saying that you can't own certain, guns and things like that, but there should be bigger, heftier background checks and licensing that takes place. I mean, we license people before we put them behind the wheels of cars. There should be licensing and how to handle weapons if we're going to be a society that carries them around.
That's a whole other podcast.
It is another whole podcast. So we are definitely out of time. So thanks for sticking with us past our time, a couple of minutes. Thank you, Sequoia. Thank you, James, again, for a wonderful podcast. The podcast next week is our pop culture podcast.
So it'll be a little bit heavier than this one, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be super heavy.
It's gonna be a 2-hour special where I just play Diablo 3 and tell you how awesome it is.
This part's
otherwise
cool.
known as every other day of his life so far.
This part's cool. Watch this.
Awesome.
Watch what my guy does here.
Awesome.
Yes,
awesome.
Diablo 3. James, you will be doing a review for Diablo 3. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I will be, if my brother is not interested, I will be doing a review from the game Last of Us from the PlayStation 3 that I played and beat. 16 hours, I think I played it while I was in Ohio, and beat that mofo in a couple of days. It's a good game. But that will be next week, and then any other kind of articles that we have for pop culture-y stuff. So there you go. We will see you guys next week. We will see you folks next week. Sorry, I'm still trying to train myself. Don't
worry, you'll get it.
Thanks. I'm really good at it at work. Not so much on the podcast. All right, we will see you folks next week. Thanks for joining us.